Hey friends, welcome back to another Sunday live stream. Today I'm going to be showing you a trick you can use for less boring melodies that I bet you kind of wished you knew before. It's a secret behind a lot of the trippy kind of hypnotic techno you hear that most people don't know simply how it is created. I guarantee that if you're writing like loop-based music that is copying and pasting lots of loops, this will improve your melodies, variations, and interests if you try out this idea. So stick around, I'll explain what I'm doing along the way. In the end, the goal on this channel is to motivate you to give this a go and to help you learn how to produce and sound like yourself. So as always, feel very free to drop any questions you have in the chat and I'll do my best to answer them as we go along. And so without further ado, let's dive into today's stream. Let's have a quick little test run here of a bit of music. Make sure we've got all our levels and things working. So it looks good. I believe we have a microphone. I believe we have some music playback. That's a good starting point. If anything occurs along the way, or if you're joining in the live stream and there's any issues with the microphone or the music, please do let me know. Good afternoon, Xavi Diaz. Great to see you there. Buenas tardes. ¿Qué tal, amigo? So yeah, do let us know if there's any little technical issues. I do have a limiter ready to rumble on my master track that I may use just to raise the level of the music a little bit, but the track you were just listening to as the example is already mastered. And it's a bit of a giveaway today on sort of the sounds we're working on. There's a fair bit of harmonic layers in there. There's a fair bit of interplay between some melodies. So a little bit of like talking for a second, a little bit of guiding you through the theme of today. So today I thought we'd look at polymeters. Now, there's a lot of confusion out there, often in the world of music, about polymeters and polyrhythms, and people often get them kind of confused, and one person saying, no, that's polyrhythm and this is a polymeter. And so what I want to do is my best effort possibly to explain that in a simple way and obviously show you how you can incorporate a polymeter into your tracks and musical ideas and why it could be a good idea, particularly if you're interested in things like melodies and harmonies and this kind of hypnotic trippy sort of sounds that I spoke about in techno. So what we might do already is set up a tempo for those of you who like to get up into the faster speeds. Let's say we maybe kick off 130 BPM today. So we might actually go for, you know, that kind of level of techno today and make that sort of the focus. So if you're a fan of, you know, faster BPMs and hypnotic kind of techno vibes, then this might be right up your street, because I'm thinking that's kind of the music I'm going to make today. So we've got a BPM in. I'm going to do a little bit more reading here, just to explain. So if I talk about polymeter, if we were to ask ChatGPT, our good old friend, the AI ChatGPT, what is a polymeter? The answer we would get back is the definition: a polymeter is a musical concept where two or more different time signatures or meters overlap and coexist simultaneously. Now that sounds pretty awful, to be honest. I mean, I'm sure there's a lot of you out there who understand different time signatures, different meters. Perhaps you're very well trained and have a great understanding of music theory, and some of us might be just beginning, or we have a bit of an understanding, or we do things by ear, but we don't really understand what we're actually doing. So we're going to try and break that down, as I said, and I'm going to show you examples, because that kind of definition, it's a bit scary, right? I think. it's not that clear, and it's certainly not clear how to make a polymeter. So let's talk a little bit about music, because I think like we're going to sort of unpack a couple of things about music theory here, and polymeters definitely can be wrapped under the banner of music theory. And again, perhaps on this channel, we're sort of pointing a little bit at that it can be good to understand a bit about music theory because it can open doors, new possibilities, and perhaps you can do something in your music when you are trying to sound like you that is a bit different to everybody else because you understand these concepts. So I want you to think about harmony, and I'm just going to give you an example in a moment. I'm sure a lot of you are familiar with what is harmony, right? And harmony, we can kind of think of that it explores different pitches that blend together vertically. So let's just think of our music or the piano roll vertically and horizontally, right? So vertically gives us a good concept that when we're blending pitches, we get harmony. And what I want you to think about a little bit that we're going to explore a bit more today is a little bit more about different melodic lines that interact with each other, but more on a horizontal level instead of vertical, right? So there's still interplay, but not in a harmonic sense, right? So if we talk harmony for a quick second here on an empty MIDI track, and we just give ourselves a little MIDI clip, and we open up the piano roll, a classic case of example of harmony would be writing a chord, right? So let's say we pick a scale today. Let's go in A minor. That way, if we have to do any sort of pitch adjustments or any kind of movements of notes in the piano roll today, we're going to be in a white note scale, A minor, only white keys from A to A. So a nice, easy scale to work with and visualize, right? So let's turn on our pencil tool and we're going to make the root triad of A minor. So A, C, and then E. That's our root triad. So this is vertical, right? This is harmonizing together in a vertical way. And that's what harmony is. If we have a group of people singing together, all the same notes at this, or even different pitches at the same time, at the same beat. So all of these things are happening at the very same time as well within the meter here. That is harmony, right? If we were spreading them out like so, that is the same chord, but it is now horizontally playing as a melody. But at this point, it's on its own, right? So again, it is a melody rather than a harmony now, and it's just going to be playing by itself. So hopefully harmony is fairly clear. Another example of harmony would be, just so we're kind of clear on that, just to keep going with the clarity here, let's say that we've got our chord up here, and let's make that chord, I don't know, let's say we make it a couple of beats long, so it looks like that, and then let's maybe have another one, okay, and then maybe another one of those chords, so we've got a little bit more action here, right? And so if we then go to our MIDI clip below here, and we make another MIDI clip. And of course, we're not listening to any sound at the moment. We don't have any music involved, but we're going to get there in a second. This is just to kind of break it down and explain and guide you through polymeters and what they actually do. And so let's say down in this blue MIDI clip on this track, we were writing a bass line, and we kind of had, you know, some notes. Let's say we're what we call pedaling on the A a bit. Nothing too fancy here. And let's say maybe we go up in pitch and then we pedal back on the A. And if we use one of Ableton's tricks here, which is overlaying of the MIDI clips, I mean, we can actually put this down and you can see the two here, right? Overlaying each other in the arrangement view we are today. And we're doing that on purpose as well, so we can kind of see the polymeter when we get to that, because as I said, I'm going to do my best to show you what that's all about. So also with Ableton, we can always hold down Shift with a MIDI clip open, and then we can do this, which is great for actually in the session view, by the way, where you can start to see the overlaps between the two different MIDI clips, right? So here's the blue overlaying the yellow. Let's make it a little bit even more easier. Let's put the blue down an octave. So now that when we do that, we will be able to very clearly see the differences, right? And so when we do something like this, which pretty much all of us electronic producers are doing, I'm sure, A lot of the time with our ear, sometimes with a very clear plan, a scale and a key, and we understand the rhythm of the bass here and the chords, and we're doing it all by ear. We have harmony here, right? So this is harmonizing with that chord. When that bass note plays, it's kind of forming a bigger chord, right? It's kind of forming a bigger chord in those places that is happening. So they are harmonizing. It wouldn't be harmonizing again if that was nudged over. Sorry, if just the chord was nudged over, that then wouldn't be harmonizing. This note would be doing, these notes would be doing their own independent thing, but here it's forming a part of a chord. And actually it's giving us an octave of A's here, right? So we've got A2 and A1. That is giving us a whole octave of A, and ideally we would have probably two different instruments here, right? So we would have a different sound on the bass and a different sounding instrument on the chords, and there we would start to hear the two different instruments, but we would have harmony, right? So that was just a simple look at harmony, just to clarify that, because what we're trying to do today is break away from that a little bit. And we're starting to talk about almost, we're focusing on polymeters, but we're starting almost to talk about a concept that's called counterpoint in music. And again, very interesting thing to dig into. Perhaps if some of you would like to learn that, we can look at that in more detail in a future video. A great example of a maestro of counterpoint would be J.S. Bach, where melodies are constantly interplaying with each other without necessarily being a harmony. So think of an amazing thing where you've got two melodies that are very strong on their own, but they also vibe really well together. And one's moving up, one's moving down, and one's going in the same direction as the other, or one's stepping up at different intervals, scale degrees to the other. You know, J.S. Bach, that's one of the, concepts and parts about why his music was quite exceptional and interesting, and counterpoint's got a lot to do with that. Why am I talking about that? Well, I think actually polymeters can really help you perhaps understand that, because the goal a little bit today is to kind of have a bit of an interplay between two melodies. They're both good on their own rights, but they both work well together in the same way, right? So harmony, we understand that. As I said, we're probably doing a lot of this without paying as much attention to the theory. We're kind of using our ears. Always good to start there, but perhaps, as I said, when you learn some of these concepts, then you can break rules, understand a little bit more what you're doing, and, as I said, create things on purpose to be a certain way, rather than it just being a bit random. Oh, that kind of works well and that harmonizes well, rather than it's planned to do that. So for example, if I put one of these notes out of the A and it was here, it's not in scale, and it now forms part of this harmony, and it would be rubbing in a way that probably wouldn't be very nice. You might be lucky and this particular note out of scale could sound good. Your ears would say yes or no, but actually we know that note is not in this scale. With the scale function turned on, as we have it here, we can see it's outside the scale. It's a black key. We're only in white keys. If we put the note here, it's now the B note of the scale, the second note of A minor. Again, it will harmonize, but it will be quite different how it harmonizes. This will be very clean and neutral. This will be, again, with a rub, more tense sounding harmony, but it will be in scale and it is in key. So when you dig into all that stuff, it gets quite fascinating and quite interesting, because, like I said, you get a lot more control about how things sound and what's going on, than it just being random, the result, and it, sounding okay. You might have got lucky, and then again, it might not sound that good, right? So that's all about harmony. So now what we want to do is kind of get our first example, a little bit of a polymeter. So what we want to do, first of all, we're going to make a couple of new MIDI tracks. Let's do that. We're also going to close these two up. We don't really need those, so we'll pop them down. And again, if you're joining the live stream today, if you've got any questions about polymeters, music theory, what we're going to do here, please fire them in the chat. Also say hello. Let us know where you're tuned in from and listening, and hopefully you're finding it interesting, useful, valuable, and the benefits of what we're sort of breaking down here, the concepts. So let's use a little bit of Ableton 12's magical tools here. And let's say that we open up a 1-bar MIDI clip here. And what we're going to do is we're going to pop over to generate the set of MIDI tools. So if we kind of change the look of the clip envelopes here, you can see over here that we are going to go to the Generate tab. If you're looking at it in 12 in this view, you'll just see the icons. So it just takes a little bit more practice to understand that icon there is the Generate tab. If you're looking at it in this way, you kind of get the name at the top, which is a little bit helpful. So I want to choose from that list of generation tools, the seed, and then I'm going to have a little look at I'm going to turn generate off while I play around with these parameters a bit to get it to kind of start with some notes that I want, basically. So let's say we're not in C3, that would be C, the root note of C major or C minor, we're in A, so we can already say, let's give us an A as the starting pitch, and we might go up to 5's pretty high. Let's say A4, so we're going to stick between those 2 octaves. Note lengths, I don't really want 64th notes, they're very small. I think I'll have 16th notes to 8th notes, well, maybe a 32nd in there, let's try that. And then velocity, well, that's not a bad range really between soft notes and hard notes as starting point. 4 voices, do we want lots of vertical voices in this case? And how thickly populated is the seed that we're going to plant here? So let's generate that. That's what we get, right? So now we can sort of start to pull these around a little bit. Let's bring the density down. I don't want it that busy. Okay, so that looks like a bit more of a workable kind of melody. And let's even say voices. So now we're down a little bit just to 3 voices. If we come down to 2, as you can see, we're lowering the number of notes. Density, let's maybe go back to that, a little bit of that, okay? But I think this note here, I'd already just mute that one out, as I don't think I want to use that. So we've got this melody here. Let's give it a synth. So let's say we start a little bit already with our sound selection, and let's loop this. So let's have maybe analog in the mix. So we'll pop that on there. And let's duplicate this as well. So we can do that down here in the MIDI clip. So we've got double the length, and then we can stretch out our clip up here. So we've got a longer copy of the melody. So we can stretch that out. Just have a quick listen to what the result is of those notes that we've got from the seed. Pretty raw at the moment, but it's there, right? And we can play around with that a lot. Again, you know, obviously with these tools, we could go and start again and start a new seed and change things around, but that's workable already because I can already hear that if we tweak the synth sound a bit, we can already get something quite interesting from that. So let's say that again, we do a bit more duplication. So we duplicate it. Again, now we've got kind of 4 bars. Let's maybe go all the way to 8 bars. So if we duplicate it one more time, now we're all the way out to 8 bars of this same melody, right? So we can stretch it all the way out there to 8 bars. And there it is. So we've got our first starting point. We've got this kind of melody, but we're not yet playing with polymeters, that's for sure. What are our intentions here? Our intentions are to kind of create these 2 melodies that can play together that are interesting interplay between the 2, right? So if we were harmonizing again, we could copy this MIDI down. We could go and get a new instrument. So let's say we drop the meld on it. And let's say we just have 1 oscillator for the moment, and we now have this. Let's change the meld so that it's a different oscillator. So we get a different character. But really what we've kind of done if we were harmonizing like this is we've just stacked another layer on top with a new instrument. So we've raised the volume, we've reinforced the notes with a new instrument. We have got 2 sounds. Now we could pan these instruments away from each other, could be a good idea. So let's say we pan the meld 20 to the left and we pan the other instrument 20 to the right. So So there's lots of tricks where we could continue to make this interesting as well. So we could go back to the analog, all the meld, and we could say, let's have all the same notes. They are in parallel, they're harmonizing, they're doing exactly the same thing. Let's put the meld up an octave. So we could do that, or in contrast to that, we could come back into the meld and we could go down an octave, although that's getting pretty low. It's getting into the bass line area here at the bottom notes. And on a sound design perspective, well, there's plenty of things we could do. We could add a little delay to the meld. Let's say if we were doing that, we go down here and we grab ourselves, let's say the echo, pop that over here. Let's bring the dry wet down. So the analog's not delayed, but the meld is. But all of these are just what we probably already know that we can do, right? That's not anything new today, I don't think. It's just copying the MIDI, changing the instrument. There is a tip there though, if you do that, there's nothing wrong with doing that, but I do want you to think about adding a different instrument to that, and of course delaying the line, shifting the pitches up and down. So we could move it, not an octave, but we could move it, say, a fifth, which would be 7 semitones. So if we looked at the A here, we'd be 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, landing on the F in this case, right? So we don't count A, that's 0. We go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. And if we also look 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, it's the fifth scale degree. Sorry, 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5 we're looking at here is the E. So you know, we can go up to different scale degrees. This is the 6th, 7th, and 8th. I'd actually quite like the 5th. So I'm going to move up to the E. So again, I'm just going to move this lower note until it lands on the E. There it is there. And now I've moved that up a fifth. So we've got that different kind of rub, right? So that, you know, there are things you can do in there to make it a bit more interesting. Let's get that back to how we had it. So we've now got the parallel, we've got the two instruments, we've got harmony. That's not what we're kind of trying to do here today. Let's make sure we copy the color of the clips over. We're trying to learn polymeters. What are they? What can they do for us? If we go back to our definition at the beginning that I walked you through, a polymeter is a musical concept where two or more different time signatures or meters overlap and coexist simultaneously. That sounds pretty daunting, I think. So we're in 4/4. This is time signature up here. That is the meter that we're in, which means that when we put the metronome on or we're listening to this just with the analog, we've got that pulse of the 1, 2, 3, 4, the strong beats. If we're in a different signature, time signature, for example, we can change it up here. Let's say we're in 7/8. We've now got a different pulse. So what we kind of want is to keep our time signature 4/4, but we quite like one of these melodies to be in a different type of signature like that. Now you could potentially go down to the clip in here and change the signature down here, but I'm going to show you a quicker way of how to do polymeters in the music that we're making here. And that is that really all we want to actually do to create a polymeter is to shorten one of these. So I'm going to pick on the meld track. We're going to shorten the loop or lengthen it. Right? And what that's going to do is cause a different time signature. It's going to cause a different number of steps to happen as things go round and around. So let's say that we have our beautiful 8-bar loop, which we're going to do something with in a moment. But let's just start again with just 1 bar. Copy that down. Pop it down to there. Let's give it the same color as the track. And then we'll make it really nice and simple so we can see what's going on here. So here's our 1 bar. Well, let's make sure that it's actually set to that, and we'll even crop it in here to 1 bar and loop it back up. So there's our 1 bar. We don't have any MIDI to the left and right, nothing like that, right? If we start to shrink the loop here, that is, we remove a couple of the beats here and bring it into a shorter loop length, we're now saying that if this was playing, it doesn't have the same amount of steps as it did a moment ago. So there's a little maths here, but again, I'm going to keep it quite simple. But in this case, let's say we changed the grid to 1/8 notes. We can see that we've now got 7/8 notes in this clip, right? That's all the grid divisions here. We've just divided it up. So it's now actually the same time signature as what I just changed a moment ago up on the time signature globally. So if I go back and I put that meter back to 7/8, which you saw me do before up the top here, that meter, that's actually 7/8. So that's kind of what's going to be happening inside this clip, right? It's now going to be the time signature of 7/8. And I think that's a good place to start for today by shortening the MIDI, the loop length of the MIDI clip and the loop we had, and making it a different time signature by doing that. Now we could shorten it further. Now it's 6/8, right? Or we could drag it out longer, and now we've got 8/8, right? So, sorry, 9/8, and then we're going 10/8, and we're, you know, modifying the time signature. So hopefully you can see the, you know, the story behind this, and that you agree with me that changing the loop length to what we've got at the moment, and if we look across the grid, we can see we've got 7/8 notes, right? We can kind of clearly see that even if we put on our pencil and we put like across here and then we count all those notes, we're going to see that we've got 7th, 8th notes, and that's the loop. It's going around in that time signature. So that's a pretty cool way to get a polymeter without too much head scratching. So let's delete those notes, and let's actually then, with this particular clip, we know it's a different clip, and you can even see it here. What's going to happen with this clip a bit with what's going on above? It's now starting to get out of time with what's going on above, right? So let's give this a new color. Let's make it sort of green or something like that. And let's pop into here. And the same thing I did before, highlight the MIDI, which is already done. And I'm going to right click and crop it. And that has now looped that 7/8 into a fixed clip, which is what we've got here. So that time signature, the clip is now at that size. So if I loop it and drag it out, I'm getting the 7/8 all the way across here, nice and easy. And if you look across here, you will see that there are now differences quite clearly between each of the MIDI until we get to the very end here of the 8 bars where we've reset back to the same pattern. So let's overlay them with each other. And now you can kind of see that again here. Perhaps we can go a bit stronger with the color choices, and then we can kind of hopefully see that difference a bit more there. So we can kind of see that at the beginning, there's just that one note that's different from the original MIDI and the polymeter that's below it. But then we start to get really, really different as we go across, right? Until eventually they reset at the very end of 8 bars. In this case, different time signatures, different loop lengths are going to reset at different points in time. If it's 10/8, 9/8, or something else, 11/16 or something, it's going to take a certain amount of time for that pattern to return to the same pattern. So now we've got the original MIDI copied down. It's not harmonizing at all. Sometimes it is, so we could say all of that first area where it does kick off, there's a harmony there, and then it's what we call contrapuntal. It then starts to play around each other. So if we're zooming in here, we start to see, yeah, there are overlaps, but they're starting to happen in and around. So there's this interplay. Now, hopefully, if you're following this along, your brain starts to go, well, okay, that's just the very basics here, because we could do a lot more again. I showed you a moment ago with the same MIDI in parallel and in harmony that we could pitch it up an octave, bring it down, change the movement of it, change the pitch of it, so it could get more interesting, right? So let's stick with this for a second. Let's have a listen. We've got our meld, we've got our analog. We don't really need that clip anymore. This is our polymeter down here, so let's label that just so we don't get confused. And we're going to say 7/8 is the time signature on that one. And now we can have a listen. I think the panning idea is still nice. So they're panned a little bit apart. Let's actually maybe even go for a bigger contrast. Let's see if we might use something like, let's see, have we got a marimba sound handy to us? Let's see if we do. Helps if you spell it correctly, of course. So we'd like an instrument kind of, if we could, potentially. Let's see, we got an instrument. Okay, maybe this one. So if I pitch this meld down a little bit, we start to get this kind of trippy, hypnotic, kind of weird interplay between the two layers, right? And we know that they're not resetting until much later. So that is how we can come up with a polymeter quite quickly, how we can take that in further directions. So I've kind of gone through harmony, I've gone through panning. These little clips up here were for me to kind of take a look at. Let's compare this in a second to a sequencer. So we'll do another MIDI track and I'll walk you through and guide you as to how you can do this in a sequencer instead in Ableton Live, so we can come up with the same result, but we do it inside a sequencer instead, because I'm sure there's plenty of you using sequencers. So let's grab ourselves a sequencer so that we can do that. We could have a couple of different types. Maybe we'll just use the one that we get within the Ableton 12 browser. Under MIDI effects, we have the very nice melodic steps. So let's grab that, throw that onto MIDI track, and we'll walk through that in a moment. I mean, in the end, a lot of people don't realize that Ableton Live's piano roll is a sequencer. This is actually a sequence of notes, and we can program it just like we can using a sequencer. What we're trying to do here is break this down so that we're not having like a, you know, just a random result of what happens. This has been planned out and thought out. We know what we're doing. We're trying to make a polymeter. We're not randomly falling onto melodies that could kind of work around each other, right? We could do some other things here as well. We could copy maybe another one of these down. Say maybe the original MIDI clip that we started with, which again was just Ableton Live 12 that gave us that. And let's say we mute all of the middle notes and top notes, the A3, A4 octaves, right, up there on the piano roll. Let's zero those out, and let's just have this bottom sequence as a bit of a bass line idea, right? And we might actually lower that down. So let's say we even pop that down into the next octave. I think that's a great position for that. And we could have operator on that one perhaps. So let's just have a little listen to that for a second. So now we've just blown it out into 3, and actually I made a little mistake there, because I would actually go back up to the pink clip and then remove those bass notes potentially from there. They are an octave higher, so we could leave those in. They would harmonize with the bass notes in the marimba at the moment, but they might actually be better to take them away. It's a choice, as it would give a little bit more space to the bass line. So let's try that now. And in the polymeter, we could kind of do the same if we wanted. We could take out these lower two. But I kind of like them because I think that's kind of quirky at the moment. All right, so let's now have some drums. let's just build up a little bit of an idea, because as I said, I am going to make a bit of music as we go along here. It's not just me chatting and just smashing away here at Polymeters, but hopefully, as I said, it's been interesting so far, and we're going to keep going on with that. So let's maybe have our good old friend, the 909 drum kit, just for a bit of proper, authentic kind of techno goodness. Let's have a MIDI clip for the drum rack. I might end up using some separate drum samples, but we'll see how we go. So let's make ourselves a little MIDI clip here, turn on the preview. Let's just start with the basic kick drum there for a second. Balance out these levels of the drum kit a little bit. We can get some nice meaty reverb on this clap a bit as well, make it a bit more interesting. And of course the synths, by the way, they're very raw at the moment. I'm going to sound design those so they sound a bit nicer in a little bit. Using all these beautiful tools that we have now in Live 12 to just bring some velocity in, made a little ramp on those claps there a little bit as well. Just a tiny bit of variation on those claps. So now we can start to work a little bit on these synth sounds. The marimba was there for contrast before, to really kind of like prove the two layers that are working together as the polymeter. So let's now kind of concentrate a bit on getting, as I said, these a little bit nicer. So my polymeter is sitting down just above the bass line. So let's maybe try turning this one into a bit of an acid line. Let's see what that sounds like. So we might as well do that from scratch. And let's grab ourselves an analog synth. It's a good one for that. Operator, all of them will do it in the end. We don't really need two oscillators for a second. Let's have the volume up a bit on the analog. We'll turn off the other synths for a moment. Just have the drums. We can have the bass as well. We'll work on the bass in a little bit. All right, back to the analog. We're going for acid. So we could maybe try the voices down 1 on this. But we want it on everything, so I've just undone that. Okay, and now we're going to work on the other one, which we might have meld instead of this kind of marimba sounds. Right, so we haven't tried to go for too crazy kind of like separation yet from sounds. Sorry, I ignored the chat for a moment. Polymeters are the work of the devil. Normal Norman, love it. Yeah, I like a bit of the work of the devil. I think, you know, classic acid lines are 3 steps usually. Yeah, can be. I mean, they can be obviously a few things on that side of it. I also thought about making these kind of legato, which could be interesting as well. We might do a couple of alternative clips so that we can work on that line, but it was just to try and get a bit of a contrasting synth for the moment. But appreciate your comments there, Normal Norman, and as I said, love a bit of a devil work, that's for sure. All right, now we're starting to get slowly but surely, as we're doing this from scratch, getting a bit of a sound together here. Let's get a bit of a saturator onto our kind of idea here of the acid synth. Now we're starting to get into the nuts and bolts of a bit of techno happening here, as we're not trying to make too clean and too pretty today. A bit more grimy. Lots of things we can kind of work on here in the future, automate a bit. So we're getting along a bit. Let's try out some different ideas with the meld a bit. Quite like this oscillator that's called the tarp. Sorry, Norman, I wasn't keeping up with the chat here. It sounds like old acid house, which is good. Yes, we like a bit of that. Some modular drums would be cool, but that's more Detroit to it. Yeah, also some nice maybe chord type stabs could be good in here. Could be something we work towards. So thanks for the suggestion there. Give me a little bit of inspiration. I think we need a ride cymbal for sure. A bit of a stick perhaps as well, so we could maybe use the rack for a couple of other sounds. Bit of a classic. I might do that on a separate percussion track, I think. So let's say we'll try this meld up an octave now. Yeah, I prefer it up here. All right, so we've got a little bit of saturation here. Let's keep the echo on the acid line. And now things are getting a bit weirder as the polymeter lane has now kind of got a little bit of a delay tail to it. So not only is it pushing around these notes, but in these little bit of silence around the notes, we're getting this nice kind of bit of a trippy delay, which we can mess around with a bit as well. Let's also try bring it back in the center for a moment. I think it sounds better panned a bit to the left to give it a nice separation from the meld. Trying out a few ideas on the filter here. Let's get into the matrix. So now we're modulating the filter a bit in the meld with LFO1, but you can kind of hear the fun thing about this, just to stop, take a pause for a second, is that literally, and I did write it down a bit earlier, so it might be nice just to check back to my notes, because I've kind of broken down, hopefully, how you can make your own polymeters in a simple way, rather than the definition of this different time signatures or meters that overlap. So I will look at polyrhythms in the future if you're very interested in this, so we do get to understand the two different polys, because polyrhythms, actually the loop length, let's say, stays the same, but then the rhythms between the patterns within that loop change. In the polymeter, I shortened the loop length in this case, or we could have lengthened it to create this different time signature. Today we've got 4/4 playing against 7/8. And so the patterns, as I said, they don't repeat, they kind of work around each other till they eventually reset and come together. And also counterpoint. I do want to maybe dig into that in the future, because we can look into that and see polymeters can help us get counterpoint. And then we can also like you've seen me a little bit transposing these melodies up and down, we can also make one melody go up, like moving up while one moves down, and there's rules to counterpoint, so you get these interplay between two different melodies, and then you get more spice as well. So like I said, I think music theory, it really does have a role in production, and hopefully looking at some of these videos and me walking through this, you get the idea a little bit that it's a nice roadmap that can guide you a little bit, because we can always rely on our ears. That's really important to do anyway, and we can rely on random results, but we can also do a bit of a collaboration with all of that and kind of know what's going on. So one thing I wrote down earlier that I didn't speak about, which we're starting to see here, is counterpoint or polyphonic techniques, or the polymeter. It's really an economical way to come up with ideas, because we just started with Ableton Live 12, rolling the dice, it throwing back out a melody for us for nothing, just generated with the seed, and that then became the polymeter. It's then become the bass line, and it's just very economical. You can literally write one single idea and then make so many other ideas from that. I was already thinking as well, up here in this pink clip, which is the original melody, apart from just muting some of the notes at the bottom here, and one that Ableton gave me in the pattern that I didn't really use, I already start to think of variations as well, such as, like, we know we can go up and down an octave and things like that, but we could also, earlier in the track, we could copy this over here to the right, and then in this one, we could just literally pick out some little phrases from it. So what do I mean by that? We could have just like a little bit of that, let's say, perhaps, and maybe even just down to that. Right, so maybe I'm better to bring... So you can play around with that, right? And now we can create a new little sequence that just rolls along earlier on in the track. Just reading here, yeah, I usually do a 3-step up on the steps so it repeats. Yeah, that's nice as well. Absolutely, you can make a nice, very short clip, put the 3 steps in there, so you're getting, again, exactly a new time signature. I just think that's from Normal Norman, so thanks for sharing that. Absolutely, that's another way you can do it. But here, I just kind of made a 1-bar loop, right? And I've used all the tools here of Ableton, so just showing you a little bit how, you know, you can use that, but also you can kind of see what's going on and what that's created, because when you get good at this, you can do it without really needing to, you know, crop the clips and do it visually. You can put the loops how you want them, and you know you're getting a polymeter out of it. But yeah, we're kind of breaking it down very, very basic here, so we can kind of get the basics down first. I haven't shown yet how to do it in a sequencer. That's on my plans as well. So All right, let's work on our operator a little bit as well. That's really hadn't got a love at all. It's been neglected, left out in the cold. I've just got an MPC and a few synths to make live techno. Awesome, Normal Norman. Love to hear that. The main thing is to have fun, right, my friend? But that sounds like good fun to me for sure. I kind of feel like this is a bit slow. I don't know about you guys and girls that maybe are tuned in. So maybe we're just going to go up a little bit quicker. Yeah, I think somewhere like there. Have a bit of FM synthesis on the operator bass line. There we go. Just me check my levels a bit on the output, so I'm gonna give a little bit of limiting for you guys and girls out there in the stream so we get the music level up a bit. Now we're starting to cook a little bit. At least I'm feeling it. I hope you guys are feeling it. Now we're starting to cook. This bass could also sound nice with a little bit of delay on it. Thanks, Normal Norman. It's kind of fun doing this in real time, right? This is all just, it's not scripted. It could sound rubbish. In someone's eyes and ears, it might well already sound rubbish, but it's kind of fun. I'm having fun. I hope you're having fun. And I hope you're learning something as we're going along here. So yeah, actually what I might try on the bass, excuse me, a little bit of beat repeat could be fun here, just to see if we get some little fills. Excuse me. There we go. I just realized I have panning on the bass as well. We're going to take that off. There we go. That's better. So I've added these little fills. So let's just see if we can better in 16ths. There we go. Let me get a little glitchy. That's one idea. Could mess around with that to try and get it some little repeats happening. Could do a little bit of delay, just a subtle bit on the bass, just to fill in the silence again. We don't want to turn into mud though. What we might do is we'll actually use the echo instead, because echo has a nice feature here where we can mono out the echo so we can control our bass, keep it nice and centered, but give it a little bit of vibe. And we just want a little bit of that. Really little bit. off to the raw. And another one that can be used in this sort of techno, oh, thank you, Norman, thank you for your sub, appreciate it a lot. So yeah, sorry, just lost track of my thought there for a second. Gated delay can be good, so we could try a little bit of that. And there are some kind of tasty presets in this one where essentially it's a delay that wherever these blue sequences, the notes, the steps of the sequence here, and we're talking a bit about unusual steps today, we kind of get a reverse delay. So you hear it, it sounds a bit like a kind of almost a deck stop on a vinyl deck or something like that. And there's some quite cool kind of presets in here that you can try out as well. Let's just hot swap it, we'll do it that way. Euclidean reverse, I think, is interesting. There you go. Right, so you get these kind of reverse delays. It can be quite fun. We got a bit weirder now with that, but it's interesting. Try out some of the other ones. So maybe you could automate this. Let's try this as a bit of a creative thing. Let's see what happens if we just have it on only on one section. Maybe. Need to make it a bit bigger, I think. I want these two notes to sound. Okay, I need to work on that a bit. Interesting idea though, I think. That's better. Okay, so essentially, yeah, we don't hear the note when we get the reverse repeat. So maybe not that idea, but it was something I wanted to try there. But also interesting with the gates. The one that you could kind of leave on a bit more was the Euclidean reverse, or the other one of these other ones, I think just the gated delay. So that could be interesting for a bit of variation. Make a bus and EQ the verb and delays. Yeah, that could be a good thing. We could definitely route those that direction, like to our send and returns over here, and instead of being on as an insert. So I agree with that decision at some point for sure, just to get out any muds. But we can also adjust them within the plugins themselves, right, as well. So the Echo has a great section here down the bottom where we can filter out and control the low end of the delay. So even if you're inserting it and making it part of the patch, as they are, the way I've worked with them here, instead of bus or send return, we can clean up that kind of stuff. But great tip that we should kind of think about that for sure as we get further into the track. Also the page of the EQ with the low cut already here on the reverb. So Ableton's pretty good with the devices these days. They all kind of have that, but it's the mindset to think about it. So thanks Norman for your thoughts and sharing that, because absolutely. But I personally wouldn't worry about that right now, but it's definitely a feature for my mixing for sure, to get everything to sit nicely. So while we're talking about mix and levels, I'm just going to have a little bit of an adjust on that. Housekeeping as well. cry it out for a bit of a vocal in a moment. We'll do something funky there. Also with the meld, this melody, I'm going to make another clip, and one of these bars, I'm going to go up an octave. Maybe not all of it, so put some of that down. So now I'm just messing around, just getting a feel for like where this could go, like, you know, what are sort of changes I can make. There's plenty of automation opportunities here. So I was just playing around with the attack of the filter envelope here, moving a little bit and adjusting the frequency cutoff. So this is the kind of thing, again, what have we got? 4 tracks, a drum rack. Okay, that's got a few drum sounds going on in it, but we don't have a lot here, but we've got plenty of scope to make this sound interesting over time for sure. Noise. We could also break the rules. The original TB303 is just one oscillator. We could have 2. Tune them apart a bit. Right, so I had a bit of an idea. I mentioned about a vocal, so let's maybe something actually, I don't know why it led me to that, but I have this little few samples that I did a video some time ago. It's actually a fun one on my channel where I grabbed a bunch of sounds that are for free, delivered by NASA, recorded in space there, and I did a whole track from scratch, just grabbing little parts of all these different sounds and samples that NASA provided me with, and you guys and girls if you wish, and made a track out of it. And again, it's actually pretty techno. So some in here, there are some...
Mission complete, Houston. After serving the world for over 30... Mission complete, Houston.
Congratulate you at last, as well as 1,000 of passionate individuals across this great space faring nation.
Okay, just got a little bit of an idea with this snippet of this vocal to do something with that. Let's try it out, see what happens. I'm thinking to use it inside a sampler. So I want to drag that down into this MIDI track. There we go, that's a bit better. Down there and in, maybe here. And then we can see what happens with this little idea. So we need a little bit of a MIDI clip. So by the way, I hope you're enjoying this live stream. It's a Sunday. The stream's coming at you from Ibiza. My name's Heath. We are unpacking today Polymeters. If you joined the video now, you've probably missed a bit of the first section. Definitely worth going back and watching that. Today I've kind of broken down Polymeters, how to make them, what they can bring to your music. And yeah, we're going to maybe in the future look at polyrhythms as well, and also Counterpoint, and just how we can use those tools. Like, they might seem like college terms or university music terms, and you might be writing techno like this, but it can really be the difference between kind of an interesting, cool, your own sound versus something that's quite kind of bland and not all that interesting, right? So let's try a little bit of a MIDI note in here. Okay, so let's get warping on in here. Idea to play around with an arpeggio on this vocal. Yeah, maybe you can see where I'm going with this idea, maybe not, but...
After serving the world for over 30 years, the space shuttle turned its place in history and come to a final stop. After serving the world for over 30 years, the space shuttle turned its place in history and come to a final stop. Complete Houston. After serving the world for over 30 years, the space shuttle turned its place in history and come to a final stop. After serving the world for over 30 years, the space shuttle turned its place in history and come to a final stop.
Just trying out a little bit of an idea here with this arpeggio rate, which could be automated here. Just made a sort of vocal FX part out of this line from NASA that I sort of grabbed here and turned it into some kind of little vocal FX piece. Again, it's kind of rough and ready at the moment, but it's serving a little purpose here and it's kind of interesting, I think.
Houston. After serving the world for over 30 years, the space shuttle turned its place in history and come to a final stop. After serving the world for over 30 years, the space shuttle turned its place in history and come to a final stop.
What could be nice with it actually is if we kind of make this vocal wonky somehow and this little vocal effects. So let's maybe try it with an LFO on the delay. So we might map that to let's have a think before we do that. Let's maybe even put this into time, sync the two of them.
After serving the world for over 30 years, the space shuttle turned its place in history and come to a final stop. Complete Houston. After serving the world for over 30 years, the space shuttle turned its place in history and come to a final stop. After serving the world for over 30 years, the space shuttle turned its place in history and come to a final stop. Houston. After serving the world for over 30 years, the space.
Yeah, so now we're getting this kind of quite kind of wild repitched kind of delay thing happening here, which I think is kind of cool.
Houston. After serving the world for over 30 years, the space shuttle turned its place in history and come to a final stop. After serving the world for over 30 years, the space shuttle turned its place in history and come to a final stop. Houston. After serving the world for over 30 years, the space shuttle turned its place in history and come to a final stop. After serving the world for over 30 years, the space shuttle turned its place in history and come to a final stop.
Okay, let's do a little housekeeping as we go along here. Don't be shy as well if you are in the stream. Do say hello. Drop a little hello in the comments there. If you've got any questions, you can also drop those in the comments as well. I've been trying to keep an eye on those. Norman's definitely been busy in there. Thanks to him with some really good tips and suggestions as we went along there as well. So we've got some vocals now. We've also got this little vocal FX piece now that we could use. Just trying out some things. That's what it's all about, really, making music. So what about if we're working with a sequencer? Let's maybe have a little look at that as we've done our polymeters today using Ableton 12's MIDI tools. We created a seed, we created a MIDI clip, which was originally this clip that then became a polymeter of the same clip, and it then also gave us the seed of the bass line. And then all the instruments today, they're not presets, they've all been created from scratch. So we've got all these sounds from zero, as well as the work that's gone on inside the different clips and tracks. The only thing we've sort of just dragged in and used here now off the bat is this little ringtone clip thing that was free from NASA, a sample that I grabbed at some point. So if we're working with a sequencer, I did make a track earlier where I dropped the sequence on it. And we've got this melodic steps here from Ableton Live. You'll find it in the browser and in the MIDI effects, right over in here. There it is there. And there are some presets, I'm sure, inside of it. But the main thing you're looking at is, again, when we're talking about polymeters, we're talking about a different time signature. So if we were to dig into 1 bar of that polymeter, we've got 7 lots of 1/8 notes. So if we put it into 16th notes, you know, we've got an odd number of steps. We've got 8 plus 4, so we've got, trying to do my maths, 12, 14 steps here, right? So if you're working with a step sequencer, wherever you see 16 or a number that, yeah, exactly is 16, then that would be 1 bar of 16 steps, as it normally would be in 4/4, the meter and the time signature. So if we do a standard MIDI clip and our time signature is 4/4 and we've got 16th notes showing we've got 16 steps. But if we start to change those steps to an odd number, then we're kind of doing the same sort of thing. We're asking it, particularly where you see something like the length of the sequence. If there are some sequences that will be telling you, in this case, I'm changing inside here, the number of steps that the octaves might change, or the number of steps the pitch changes. So it's only 3 steps here. So Norman was talking about that earlier. He likes to do his acid synths in 3 steps. Well, that's exactly what's kind of going on here. There's 3 pitches available to us. So only 3 steps are changing in the pitch, not 4, not 16. So that is an odd length that it's going to be changing in. So sequences kind of work that way. You can set them up. So if we grab another one, let's say that's a little bit easier maybe to see that on. Let's say we're going to do Command F, and we're going to ask for the mono sequencer. So this is a Max for Live device. If we right click on it, show in places, it comes as a Max MIDI effect in the Max for Live Essential pack, right? So I've done that so you can see what pack you would need to have installed to show that up in your browser, and that is the pack. And if you sort of look again, it's another sequencer. We've got pitch, velocity, octave, duration, and repeat. But right down the bottom here, it's a little bit easy to see. This is globally how many steps the whole sequencer is going around in its pattern. So if I drag that in to 14 steps, and we go back and look at this in 16th, I've now matched exactly what's happening inside my polymeter today, right? So I've now got that step length. And the fun thing with sequences is, well, each of the different parameters within the sequences can be different lengths. So globally, we're going around in 14 steps, but up here, the pitch could be 3, the velocity can be 8, the octaves can be 2, and so you can mess around with all of that and get some pretty wild results, right? But again, we're kind of creating an interesting sequence by doing that. So if we were to stick a synthesizer onto this track, let's turn off the acid poly for a second, and we might just play around with this track for a moment.
After living in the world for over 30 years, the space shuttle started.
And let's strip things down a little bit. So that's what that sounds like at the moment, the sequence. So let's make it a plucky synth. And let's say we start with the velocity lane here. We currently have a randomization of, let's say, 7 steps of different velocity that can happen in this 14-step pattern. And we can go to the right here and say randomize that. Do it again. We can change the percent to be stronger over next door to random. Let's go to duration. This is how long the notes are. Let's bring the random down. That's pretty cool, right? Now let's say octave, we just want a tiny little bit. And if we don't want anything, you can reset it over to the right here. You've got like shift transpose up or down, shift the pattern left, shift the pattern right, transpose it down. That's actually quite nice. And by the way, actually with this sequencer, it goes a little bit deeper than I was talking about. 14 down the bottom here. We could actually put back to 16, and you can do it over here where it says number of steps, because you can actually go, I think, all the way up, yeah, to 64 steps, which is like 8 bars? So 2 bars is 32, 4 bars, right? So you can go all the way up to a 4-bar sequence. So I'm only working in the first, 1 bar of the possibilities. And you can also change the steps in here, as you can see, that's affecting all of that as well. So you can kind of do it up there. So again, we could have 14 steps up here. And then what we can do within the 14, as you can see, it's changed it down here. So it's basically the same control, but you can do it from up here as well. And then if we remove some of the steps, you can come up with really nice rhythms, right? Now we could randomize the pitch a little bit. Let's have, say, 7 steps of pitch. And one of the fun ones, a little tip in here, is also do odd numbers. So don't just think on even numbers in here, do think odd, because odd is where you get like 7/8, because that's an odd number, right? It's 7 lots of eighth notes. So you can play around with odd numbers, is quite fun. If we pitch it, so let's say we do randomize that, you'll also notice something to the right here of this sequencer. I do like this sequencer a lot. You can make sure that the notes that we've just pitched here in the sequencer are going to be in the scale that you're working in, and you do that over here to the right. So you can see conform to scale, but first we need to set the scale, and we are today in A minor. So we can go here, choose the 8A as our root note, and then just to the right here, we've got a few choices, but we're just going to choose minor. And now if we click conform to scale, anything that was out of the scale pitch-wise, that's just been moved into the scale now. Playing around here with the sequence. So, you know, decent sequence from the sequencer. Another way to go about it, the mono sequencer from Ableton, all the melodic steps. Just thought I'd throw that example in there and just talk to you about, again, the step length. That's what, again, is bringing that kind of polymeter feel, but in this case with a sequencer, which is where a sequencer can be quite interesting as well for coming up with things like a polymeter, as we've got, you know, a different pattern of steps here, giving us a different time signature to what's going on. The pink clip up here is the one that's following the basic normal 4/4 meter and not a polyrhythm. That was our original kind of clip that we began with there. So it might just add a little bit of percussion to this, but other than that, I think the main idea here is already sort of rumbling. So let's have a little listen to what we've got so far. So let's maybe see if we can find a little bit of, have some fun with a bit of percussion. Have we got a nice rack somewhere that's got some percussion in it, or we could make our own? Maybe we'll just make our own. Let's say we get an empty drum rack. Drop it on this MIDI track here, and we're going to do a Command F to open up the browser here, and we're going to ask for percussion. Okay, and we're going to go for one shots. Well, we do want a bit more than that. Let's go click on the packs. Now we'll just click one shot. Still only those few. All right, fair enough. Let's bring that back a bit. Okay, that looks a little bit better. I was going to say it's a bit harsh. So we've seen we've got a lot of E-perc, electrical percussion, going way down here. There's a lot of E-percs, and the Foley can always be fun as well. Foley being made from generally sounds that are, you know, real world type sounds, maybe clicking a pinball machine and recording it, or going around tapping things in your kitchen, that kind of thing. So let's maybe go with this Foley sounds in this percussion rack, and then what we might do in front of that is build up a little bit of an idea where we use a few MIDI effects to kind of get a bit of a random playback of these percussions. So let's maybe start with an arpeggio. It's a random. And let's give ourselves a note of some sort. What we've got currently. I'll stick with random in there to get this nice kind of like playing around all the different hits, but I'm not that sold on the Foley sound, so I'm going to try, I'll leave the MIDI effects where they are, but I'm going to start again with another drum rack and just try maybe some different sounds. So pop back to that. one shot, and we'll ask again perk. We could do a very specific percussion sound. Also, now this is looking at my sample library here a bit. E-perk sounds good, so let's grab a bunch of these. Go down all the way down to there. That gives us a lot. Okay, let's try that. Maybe try something here as well with the rhythm of the note up here. Let's use Option or Alt on a Windows computer, hold down E, and we can drag the mouse up and slice this a bit. Yeah, that's starting to get kind of a bit techno-ish and a bit interesting. Let's also try maybe some more copies of this. Processing after this drum rack with the percussion in it. Yo, Ahimsa Beats, I hope I pronounced that right. How are you doing? I hope you're very good and enjoying the live stream here. We're just kind of reaching towards the end today. We're just kind of messing around with some ideas here at the moment, just coming up with this kind of little bit of a weird random percussion part. Is what's happening currently in my thinking here, was just adding a little bit more detail to the main idea of the polymeter that we started today. Level balance here a bit as well. realise we don't have the classic 909 ride cymbal. We need that.
After serving the world for over 30 years, the space shuttle turned its place in history and come to a final stop. After serving the world for over 30 years, the space shuttle turned its place in history and come to a final stop. After serving the world for over 30 years, the space shuttle turned its place in history and come to a final stop. After serving the world for over 30 years, the space shuttle turned its place in history and come to a final stop. After serving the world for over 30 years, the space shuttle turned its place in history and come to a final stop. After serving the world for over 30 years, the space shuttle turned its place in history and come to a final stop. After serving the world for over 30 years, the space shuttle turned its place in history and come to a final stop. After serving the world for over 30 years, the space shuttle turned its place in history and come to a final stop. After serving the world for over 30 years, the space shuttle turned its place in history and come to a final stop. After serving the world for over 30 years, the space shuttle turned.
I think it's suitably weird and wonky, which is nice. That was the aim of the game here, to make a bit of kind of raw, kind of hypnotic techno. adjusting my 909 kick here. If you're wondering why I went silent, I'm just jamming around with the parts now as a bit of a grand finale for today. See what we've got here, see the scope of where it could go. So we've got that 909 kick. Now 909 kicks are kind of famous for where's the bass has got a little bit of a click to it. Okay, it's the ghost note in there, so maybe the ghost note in the MIDI might need a little adjustment as it's creating a sort of sound that sounds like it's a little bit of a click with the bass, but it's actually not. It's just the ghost notes that I've got there. But yeah, the 909 kick is famous for not having much of a transient, so we could group that actually and just try and see if we can add just a little transient to it. I'm not sure of the sample here, but this is Ableton's default 909. Just add a tiny little shaker. Just to give it a little more transient on the kick. So drums, what have we got from today? We've got this 909 core kit, which we've just added a little bit of a transient to the kick. This kind of wonky little percussion loop that I just made a little bit earlier with the drum rack that's being randomized and arpeggiated to play through the different samples in the rack. So I added lots of different Ep.1 samples, and the combination of the ARP and the random is playing through that. The EQ is just controlling the low end a little bit. And it would be nice to give this also a little bit of reverb just to put it into a bit of a space. You could do all sorts of fun stuff with this for sure. Let's just have a little bit of hybrid. Sounds actually quite nice with a quite washed out reverb. Spectral time could be really fun on this for a bit of sound design. Not spectral chime, sorry, I want actual spectral resonator. For exactly that. So it's less drum-like now, it's got its kind of own... We can balance it back out a bit. The dry wet. And we've got this really nice meaty operator bass. It's an FM bass. Plenty of oomph from the raw. Bring that down a little bit. And we've got our original melody. Kind of quite trippy and weird, and it's made with the mel, just one oscillator at this moment. We've got an acid line that's the polymeter from today's explanation and demonstration. That vibes off the other two elements, all built from the same beginning points. And then I made some little vocal parts from this sample courtesy of NASA. So we started with that loop, and then I made some little arpeggiated weird delayed kind of little vocal effects with it. So dropped some of the vocal into a sampler. And the idea is they're having a bit of a conversation, and we end up overall with this piece at the moment. Just turn off our limiter and see where we're at level-wise. So if I'm kind of thinking of what I would summarize today's, point and the key takeaway, I think it's literally that, of course, I think polymeters are a great idea, and a lot of people don't know how to make them. So hopefully my explanation, as I said, if you did join the video later, do go back and watch it from the beginning where we dove in, I dived in and showed you how to make that polymeter, this one here, from scratch. I do think they have a great place in music. They are the secret sauce behind a lot of those hypnotic, trippy kind of tracks. What we end up with in those two tracks, the original plus the polymeter. So again, if we just solo those two for a second, we've got one melody that could stand on its own, and another one that can stand on its own. But the idea is that they work around each other, and we can include the bass line because that also came from the same pattern. So they're all nicely working around each other. So polymeters, great thing to put in your music, great way for getting out of this copy paste, loop with not really much change. And we actually just treated this very basically. We didn't even try to go too far beyond just actually duplicating the MIDI, making a polymeter from it, then creating a bass from it. I did also create a more simplified version of the MIDI over here, so we also have somewhere else another bit of variation. So again, it's another way to work where we're imagining and thinking about our track evolving and how we can go from low energy to high energy, build-ups, breakdowns, more interest. And we've got this kind of psychedelic, trippy interaction between these two melodies playing in and around each other. And eventually what happens with these two polymeters, the polymeter and the original melody, if we sort of zoom out a bit and look at them here, they start together exactly the same, or they don't. They're slightly out by one note. So if we actually, I'll move this across as well because I did put a slight variation here, but the original MIDI looks like that. So if we open that up and then we use Ableton's tool here to select both clips together, we kind of can see the overlay, and we can see that in the very beginning, let's say we click on the pink, there's just a tiny bit of difference. But then as we get going, we get more and more interaction between the two melodies until finally at the end of, in this case, 8 bars, we reset back to the very first pattern. So, if you want to get more into this, check out Counterpoint, check out J.S. Bach. I think you might know who he is, Johann Sebastian Bach, master of Counterpoint, which is lots of melodies interplaying with each other, not tripping over each other. And there are rules that you can apply and separate them and come up with interesting music. Do they apply to techno electronic music? I think absolutely. I think they're great tools. And again, on this channel, we do try to bring a bit of music theory in and help explain it and show you how you can use it. So again, a great set of ears, amazing if you can hear harmonies and melodies and things that fit together, your bass line. Think about this, that it could just be a bass line and melody, but working together nicely. Think about, obviously, a good set of ears. We could do it randomly every single day, and that might be fun, and some days we'll get a great result and sometimes we won't. But here we plan for something, we understand what we're doing, and we get a result that we're looking for. And I think the key takeaway is that we've been very economical here. We just made one melody. It was by Ableton's 12 tools, the seed created that very first melody, which became all of these layers apart from the drums and the vocal parts. So, as always, I hope you have enjoyed this week's Sunday live stream. If you have, share it with a friend, let them know. If you've enjoyed the content on the channel, give the video a thumbs up. It's much appreciated. Obviously helps other people find the video in the algorithm and enjoy what's going on this channel and the content about Ableton Live and making electronic music. I will, as always, link a video here when I can, somewhere on the right or left. The next one I would suggest you watch if you've enjoyed this one to go into and carry on with your learning. The goal on this channel is to help you and help you to produce you. Find your sound, find your uniqueness, your distinctness, find your sound. That's the goal here, and we are in Ableton Live. So I'm going to, on that note, say a big thank you to you all. Great to see some comments today and people in the chat. Thanks for joining me on this week's live stream. Nice to have a chat with you and see you in there. And we're going to do it again at the same time next Sunday. So do keep an eye out for that. And if you ring the bell and subscribe to the channel, you obviously will know when I'm producing my next video. So on that note, have a great rest of your Sunday. Take care of yourselves. Hope this motivated you to go and open up Ableton Live and go make some music. Bye for now. Catch you in the next one. See you later, everybody. Ciao, ciao.